Oh yeah, I've got my dog. My dog is in here. She's pretty fat though. She should.
Your dog is welcome.
Yeah, she's a fat girl. Remy, you are thick. All right.
Don't forget, today is pizza day. So head on down to the cafeteria to grab yourself a hot slice.
Hey everyone, welcome to Special Containment Podcast. I'm Jake of Forlorn Foundry, and joined with me I have James of Forlorn Foundry and Eckhart Slatter.
How's it going, guys? I like how you're joined with each other too.
We are joined. It is physical. It is painful at times.
Combined to the hip.
We've been offered surgery, but the risk of dying is too high, so we turn it down.
Plus, you guys can like both edit at the same time too, and sit in the same computer chair, which I think is kind of a nice benefit.
We've done it. I will say. We did a 48-hour film festival. That was fun.
That sounds like not fun at all. I mean, I only edit crappy Star Wars videos, and it takes me like 2 hours, and by the end, I'm like, never again.
Oh yeah, it was really fun. Having that kind of, we really gotta get it done. We gotta get it done, and then we lost anyway, which is fine because there was like 70 applications to it or whatever, and it was a bunch of dramas that won. They always win.
I like reading about the game. What do they call them again? Like the game blitzes or whatever, where it's the same thing.
Game
they
Jam.
sit down for Game Jam. Yeah, they sit down for like 48 hours, and occasionally, like I think Super Meat Boy might have developed from one of those, or like a bunch of indie games will come from that, and it's probably more than anything a good way to get the creative juices flowing.
Oh yeah, legendary video game hero Notch. He also made Minecraft, I believe. It was kind of a descendant of a Game Jam thing.
Okay,
Notch is definitely, let's praise him, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
he hasn't had any gamer moments.
No gamer moments at all. Definitely not. Oh boy, what a strong start.
Yes, off the rails. I'm sorry.
No, it's all fine. This is what the people want.
Okay.
Well, I have to say, welcome to the SCP community.
Thank you. It's been... So, I started reading SCPs, like, way back in the day. I remember discovering them as, like, a security guard. I used to work in this empty office building. It was, like, a 12-story tall tower, and I'd work there till, like, 12 or 1 in the morning, all by myself. So it was the perfect... it was mostly when I was in law school and, I guess, undergrad. So it was, like, the perfect... I was still spooked, I'm not going to lie. But it was the perfect environment to read them. And so after I started my YouTube channel, and I started to branch away from just Star Wars, and for those who don't know, I do have a YouTube channel where I mostly cover Star Wars and science fiction. I was like, I've heard that like there's a pretty big SCP community, and I'd seen some of your guys' videos, but I didn't realize that the lore scene was so big. So it's pretty cool now that I can like kind of go back and become a sort of member of the community. Not as much as, half of you guys have been a part of the scene for a very long time. I'm still new, but so far reception's been really, really great. Yeah,
no, we're the youngins. Vogan and Sim, they've been like mainstays for years.
They've been grinding.
Yeah. It is a grind too. Like I obviously don't want to cover any topics that one of them have already covered, because they've probably done it much better than me. And, no use duplicating good work. So I like find one that I really, really like. And once you know it's been covered already, there must be 10 decently sized SCP channels out there just grinding away. So I think it really speaks to the strength of the content as much as anything else.
I'd say that, even if you feel that way, I think you can there's always a way to put a spin on it. There's a way to, put in your own input. And, if all else fails, you're introducing it to your fans who may not have never heard of it, and they're hearing it from you.
That's true. And then I get to feel the is SCP real question.
Oh yeah.
Oh boy.
Big time.
Oh my lord. See, now you're a part of the community. You've been that's the hazing ritual. It goes on forever. It never ends.
God.
I did do something like that with the Flesh That Hates. I did like a versus video with them, which was kind of fun. But it's crazy to see just the amount of creativity and stuff in the community.
Yeah, Sim does a lot of those. He eats that shit up.
Yeah,
that's fun.
I'm not gonna lie though, when you guys asked me to be on the podcast, I was like, I don't like I'm basically learning as I do it. So like, I don't want to like embarrass myself with the lore. It's the same thing with Star Wars. Really, anytime someone like wants to have me to talk about stuff, I'm like, people are gonna realize I'm not a fraud, but I feel like one sometimes.
I feel like you really can't be an expert with Star Wars lore. There's so much.
Yeah.
You can be like, oh, I specialize in Mon Calamari politics, yes. Because, I mean, there's just so much to it. I consider myself, oh, yeah, I'm a Star Wars fan. I know things. And then I look at it, I'm like, I know nothing.
Yeah,
I don't know where I
get
am.
like that too all the time. That happened to me today when I was writing, or yesterday when I was writing today's video. Or like people will be like, oh, what's your favorite clone trooper armor subvariant that the Camino's produced in 20 BBY or something crazy specific? And I'm just like, I don't know, man.
I mean, do you feel like there's a lot more pressure with the Star Wars fan base to like get everything right?
It depends. Like when it comes to something like the Clone Wars, and I guess I use that example for a reason. I don't know if you guys have seen the show, but
I have.
Bits.
So the generation that's like watching a lot of YouTube right now is the one that grew up with the Clone Wars, and I was sort of, I guess, a little older when it came out, so I didn't really watch a lot of it until I started doing YouTube, and I guess slightly before. So my knowledge in that area is really, really limited. So I'm like careful about what I say. I'm like pretty clear that I don't hold myself up to be an expert in this area whatsoever. So sometimes I get questions and I'm just like, I'm sorry, I just don't know. But you do definitely feel vulnerable, especially because other people hold me up to be, or not just me, but I think generally like YouTubers or people who talk about stuff like this, other people will hold you up to be some sort of really knowledgeable individual when really I'm just somebody who's read the books just like everyone else and watched the movies. So I don't have like all the answers, and I've got a really poor memory as well.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I have horrible short-term memory.
Yeah.
Like literally, I forget half the shit we worked on sometimes. It's kind of bad. And you know, I don't make nearly as much shit as you do. Mm-hmm. Like, man.
Yeah, I'm. For me, it's names. So like, I was just like, I saw someone I went to law school with the other day, and I was like, please do not talk to me because I genuinely do not remember your name. Or like celebrities, it's like obviously not the most important thing, but I'll just forget the name of like George Clooney for something. I think I got hit too much on the head or something at one point, but yeah.
Names aren't easy. I tell people like, don't be offended. It's gonna take twice. Like the first time I meet you, I'm too flustered and nervous to even retain anything that you're saying. The second time, I'll be like, I recognize that face. You're, yes.
James.
James.
Yeah,
oh, James. Yes.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah, the first time you meet somebody, I think you're mostly concerned about remembering your name, introducing your name properly. Like I've definitely had that too, where like I'll meet somebody and they'll tell me their name, and like it just didn't even register, not even for a second.
Just smile and nod.
Depends. I will say, okay, to make you feel better, you're mentioning about like, oh, what if I don't get SCP lore right? Mm-hmm. I feel like me and Jake are very lacking in that field. Like last episode, Sim and Mang Exploring Series were going off about like the particulars of an SCP article we were reviewing, and I'm just kind of like, yeah, cool. I thought it was nice. Yeah, like I'm not a fraud.
I like the part that was spooky.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, this connects nicely with SCP-4691 about like. Yeah.
Like Sim, it's like overwhelming with Sumerian because like he's been there since the start. Almost, I think.
Like it used to be that you could 100% have binged pretty much all of it in it wouldn't have taken too much time.
Yeah.
And by that point you would have like seen it all.
Totally.
And then you could have potentially moved on to listening, or not listening to, but reading the tales, because there's more. There's an extended kind of thing to it where people are actually utilizing SCPs and their own characters to create tales, and some of these are better than a lot of articles.
Totally.
So you could have definitely gotten to that point. And James and I think when we both discovered SCP independently, it was you binge for a bit. You read a bunch. You're trying to absorb as much as you can, but then you look in it. Even then, back when I was doing it, it was only up to like 2000.
Yeah.
Maybe. And now it's There's tons. There's so many of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember when I first started, there was like a lot. The very first one that I remember coming out, I don't remember if I found it on Reddit or somewhere else, but it was, and I just Googled it because I wouldn't remember the number off the top of my head, SCP-1733, and it's the NBA game that like goes on forever. Yeah. That's my favorite one too. I think of all time. And yeah, after that point, I kind of just binged them like every night because I had 6 or 7 hours at a desk doing nothing. The internet wasn't that fast, but it doesn't really matter. The site was, I think, a bit more text based and a bit more. There was less kind of doohickeys doohickeys, not doohickeys. That's different. Doohickeys in the article, so you could I could load it on my slow work internet. And I remember I read all of like the really highly rated ones, and then was just reading random ones, and there wasn't too much left after I was on it for a while. And that was, I guess, probably 7 or 8 years ago. I know it's not the beginning, but it's still, the site was a lot smaller than it is now. It's crazy how it's like continued to balloon and snowball.
Oh yeah, it essentially went viral a few different times. So when you were looking at it, it was very much like this secret kind of thing that you could have stumbled upon. And frankly, I mean, it's been around for about 10 to 11 years, I think, depending on
nearing 11.
Game.
Yeah,
I believe it's around that point. But it's when the games started coming out, and not just like, walking down a staircase simulator. It was when Containment Breach came out that it really hit its stride, and at least getting a ton of people because Let's Players.
Yeah.
So that's where we have most of our audience now. That's what they are.
I'm sure Reddit helps quite a bit too. I think I probably found it from like 4chan or something, not from Reddit, but I've never even played any of the games, which is weird. But I only got a decently functional computer when I started YouTube. So like it's kind of like I'm going back and like I'll be like streaming Star Wars games that I couldn't when I was a kid, or whatever else. Not because we were poor or anything, just because having a computer was never a big, or having like a top of the line computer was never a big priority for my parents, and it wasn't a big priority for me too. So I never got to play any of them, but I really want to go back now at some point and do as much as I can.
I think that's pretty shocking here, given me and Jake grew up on the internet. So it's like, what did you do with your time? I'm 20. We're both 23.
We're both 23.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm 27. Like we still had the internet. I got the internet in grade 2, and we were really late getting the internet. And we grew up on the internet. I grew up on MSN and Facebook and stuff, but it was just gaming, I guess. Like I always had a perfectly functional, PC, even a laptop growing up. But when I was playing games, it was on Xbox because that's what all my friends had.
Yeah, there was like a peak period, I feel, for Xbox, that it was really like, this is it. You come home from school and you play games. You play Halo.
Totally.
It's got to be Halo
3.
Halo 3. Halo 3 customs were legendary. It united both nerd and jock. There were people that I would have never talked to in school, and then I come home and we're playing like Fat Kid on Pie Factory, and I'm just like sweeping the floor with them, and I'm like, oh yeah, eat that, and then in school, head down, hands in pockets. But fun times with Halo.
You were that fat guy in the Pie Factory.
I was. Yeah,
just joking. I don't know what you look like, so that wasn't a slight.
Dangerously accurate.
Okay, well now I feel bad. People just, Anyway, my buddies and I, we were more about we were the Team Slayer tryhards. We'd always get 4 of us with our like custom clan name and stuff, and
MLG,
I guess you could have
MLG only, BXR.
Well, we tried. I mean, we weren't very good. We never even got a 50 in Team Slayer, which is pretty damn easy in Halo 3. But yeah, that's some really fond memories. I guess I would have been in grade. I was trying to figure this out on the stream the other day. Halo 3 came out in 2008, I'm pretty sure. Wasn't it? 2007. Okay. Oh yeah, 2007. So I was like grade 10 when it came out. And yeah, I had the same experience everyone else did, just basically playing a shitload of it. And losing a bit of social life in the meantime. Well, gaining a different social life.
I feel for you. I was honestly very jealous. I grew up on Nintendo because my parents were like, we're not paying for you to play with people online.
Yeah.
So The Legend of Zelda and Animal Crossing it up.
I kind of regret not playing some of those games because for me, like, I've grown up with computers. I was using a Macintosh when I was 2, and I was playing Postopia and all this crap just online, whatever. Neopets, throw it at me. And then eventually, like, I think in first grade, my dad got me an original Xbox, and I was like, oh, this is cool, I guess. And then I got Halo, and there are some scholars, aka my mom, at this point, who believe that that's where my life ended, when I was introduced to Halo, and it never really. That was it. I'm something of a Halo super fan.
Awesome. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, I know too much about that series, and they have consistently hurt me. I am a wounded Halo fan, I will say.
Yeah, me too. That's like another. It's the same with Star Wars. Halo's got a lot of lore.
Oh, Star Wars too. Oh, they've done it a dirty, I feel, but there's people who like it.
Yeah, I don't think they've done it as objective of a dirty as Halo has been done. The sentence is getting confusing, but yeah. So for me, like, I know most of the lore up to Halo 3, and then like after that, I've picked up some of the novels and stuff. But like, I have people that help me with some of my Halo videos, unless it's about spaceships, because I can usually manage that on my own. But yeah, I've been hurt a few times by Halo as well. I remember playing through Halo 4 and just taking the poster down in my room.
Oh my god, I was so hyped for it. There was this is around the time that New York was hit by a hurricane. This was Hurricane Sandy. So we were like out of power, and the second my power got back, I just like grabbed Halo 4. I'm like, this is it. We're doing it. And after just doing it in one day, I was like, so that was Halo 4, huh?
Yeah, Halo 4 was the last game I waited in line to get a physical copy of.
Oh boy.
And not because Halo 4 was that bad. That's not what stopped it. Just that doesn't really happen anymore.
No, not at all. The GameStop near me that, we used to wait in line for all the releases. I was there for midnight release with Skyrim, Halo 3, all this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
They closed down. It's just, get it digital. Get you digital
I've got really
games.
fond memories of that, too. Like, waiting in line, like, yeah, okay, it kind of sucks, but you're only going to be there for a few hours, and it's just fun because everyone's pumped up. Everyone's super excited. Yeah, I miss that. I mean, digital is so convenient, but there's something to be said about having the experience of going and picking up a physical copy. Like, although I don't, like, miss having to do this in a way, I do kind of am nostalgic for having to run around town to, like, try to find a copy of, like, The Last of Us or whatever, or, like, Halo 3 being completely sold out the Christmas of 2007, and my buddy scratching it in his Xbox.
I mean, one thing I really miss that definitely the newer generation, God, I'm not even that old, let's be real. But anyway, the newer generation, they'll never get to experience the whole, like, video game rumors. Like, I remember when I used to play Smash, and it's like, oh, Toad, he's the ultimate unlockable character, and like all these cool little fun, like almost like creepypasta-esque kind of discoveries sometimes with video games that like the internet has completely killed.
Well, we can kind of turn this around, because this is something to be said about YouTube. YouTube has changed so much. In what it used to be was just, a repository for whatever videos, and it was very easy for, if you hit the wrong thumbnails too many times, you'd enter the dark section of YouTube, which was like found
Not
mermaid. Oh no, this was like weird mermaid spotted, real paranormal footage, UFO, or just like wild stuff. And you'd have like, people would just make such fake crap, like how to unlock crazy new like Halo helmet, and you get rickrolled.
I think everyone remembers that picture of like the leaked, and I'm doing air quotes because you guys can't see, the leaked Halo 4 image with like the I don't even remember what it was from, but it was just some like monster in a cave, and like
it is this big like worm thing kind of sitting there. Yeah. And the reason I know this is because it was brought up on Reddit like not too long ago, and I'm like, what is this? Like, I want to like look into it. Mm-hmm. And it was apparently they took this monster from it was Gunman Chronicles, which is a Half-Life 1 mod. And I'm like, what the hell? So I actually sat down and played the mod, and it's pretty good. It was there. I'm like, hey, look, you're the Halo 4 leak.
One thing I've discovered is about YouTube is a lot of YouTube, especially videos that are watched by kids, and this is kind of a negative, is people click on thumbnails that are bizarre and that like trigger confusion and like for example, kids, and I think both you are probably familiar with. There was that there still is so I've got a kid. Some of your viewers, if they watch my channel might not know that, but I've got an 8-month-old, and so I'm starting to like look at what kids' YouTube is like, and people put thumbnails that like will just trigger the part in like a kid's brain that's like there's something like dark association there, some strange association. Like one thing that you see a lot of is needles and bugs, and people put that stuff in thumbnails to try to get kids to click, and it changes as you get older. But another example is like what you were talking about earlier, Jake, with like the sea creatures, for example. It'd be like some bizarre fish or something. I remember seeing it'd be like, oh, deep fish pulled up. And it would just be like something that was just clearly bizarre enough that you're like, I know this is probably fake, but it's just so weird, I gotta check it out. And that was that Halo thing too. So a big portion of getting views on YouTube, at least back then, was just making some real weird shit and putting in a thumbnail.
Well, actually, I have an interesting... Since you are a YouTuber and you have a decent understanding of YouTube,
sure,
does that make you want to ban YouTube from like your kid for a while?
No, not necessarily, but so I do watch YouTube with my kids sometimes. Just like I'll put on like nursery rhymes or whatever. But you've got to be really, really careful, because like I was looking for this video that he watches, and like not even on the first page of search results there was one of those like it was like it was like a doctor giving a needle to like a pregnant Minnie Mouse or something with like a bug inside of her. It's really like obscene and strange shit. And you click on that and it only gets worse. And like, it's just, there's something really nefarious about it all. So you have to be careful.
I think, was it Spider-Man Elsa that started all that shit?
It's definitely the thing that was most public, but it's a really sick thing that's been going on for quite a while. And the thing is, a lot of parents, they just look up like YouTube like children thing, and then they put on like a playlist. But there's nobody who curates these playlists. None of them are official. So at the very end, you can have anything. And, I mean, you can age restrict certain things, but some things are not really worthy of age restriction, but are definitely questionable.
I was going to say, sometimes it's not even playlists, too. It's just browse. And there have been various studies that show, like, as the longer you're on, like, one of those browse trains or recommended trains where, like, you just keep watching videos YouTube suggests to you, the more they'll hone in on a particular sort of aspect of the video. And like, I don't want to get political because it doesn't matter, but they talk about that sometimes with radicalization or with just anything, you know, like the more you watch on a specific topic, the more you kind of dig deep, and thus often the more extreme you get about the specific topic. So if you leave, you know, what starts out relatively simple as a kid's video, and it's just YouTube recommendations might pick up on one aspect of that, like say a video has bugs in it, and then you get started on this whole kind of train where, okay, first it's bugs, then it's eating bugs, and then it's like bug pregnancy, like the video that I saw earlier, and then, you know, who knows where.
Yeah, they have like bug fight clubs.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's cool. A little inhumane.
No, just period.
Okay, my bad. Very cool.
No, I remember they had that when I was a kid too. But your question is a good one, like about whether I'm going to pay attention. I'll pay attention to what my kid does, but I navigated the internet too when I was like not. He'll have it his entire life. When I was 12 or 13, I started to have a bit more unfettered access to it, LimeWire and shit, and like I don't know.
It's a throwback.
I definitely was kind of also in the wild, wild west of the internet. Pretty much just finding stuff on my own, no one there to really monitor it or censor it, so you fall into some interesting portions of the internet if you're not careful.
Definitely. And you can do a lot to protect your kid at home. You can put the internet, you can put the computer in the living room or limit time or whatever else, but your kid's going to have friends. I remember the first time like I started like me, I'd go to my buddy's house and maybe his mom's not as attentive or whatever. So like there's only so much you can do to protect anyone from that sort of stuff. You kind of just have to prepare them and teach them and like,
oh my God,
in a healthy way.
You just reminded me of an old memory I thought I forgot about. The first time I ever saw porn, I was like 12. Okay, the reason why most people find it, I guess, when they're 10, but I grew up with net zero, which for people who don't know is extremely slow internet. And if you pick up the phone, your internet cuts out. And my dad worked at home, so he was always on the phone. But I went over to my friend's house, and he's like, "Oh my god, dude, you have to see this!" And we were really into Transformers around then. I think you can see where this is going. And he's like, "Yo, check out this hot pic I found." And it's a really shitty Photoshop of Megan Fox's face over some like naked girl, and I'm like, "Oh my god."
The good old days.
I didn't know how to process it. I was just like, "Oh."
Back when you could still believe that.
God, yeah. And
This
it was
is,
like, I don't know. You could tell he was getting 10 viruses looking at this photo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like,
computer's still infected. Every computer he gets is just...
God.
Warning: this game will make you come instantly. Yeah, it's all that great stuff. I mean, it reminds me like this is a thing with like trying to like I guess steer you away from certain media. It's so difficult because I'm thinking back when I'm like a kid. There's time like I once walked down my stairs into the basement just to see what my grandpa was up to. Don't worry.
Okay.
And
worried.
I like looked at his TV and I'm like, oh, what is this? And it was playing Starship Troopers, which is a great movie, fantastic movie.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it was the cow scene. So I come downstairs and it's a cow being shredded, thrown limb from limb, screaming as though like a giant bug is just tearing it apart. And I just start sobbing and sprint up the stairs. Couldn't have helped it. Couldn't have avoided it. It was just. I
don't
I feel like
blame you.
to see that.
being exposed to Starship Troopers at a young age is like the best way to make a man or a woman.
It will make a
Out of
man
your
out of
child.
you. It'll make you a citizen.
No, citizenship has to be earned.
My bad. Yeah.
I
stepped
had
too
a
far.
stream a couple nights ago, and at the end of it, we were watching Starship Troopers, and that's funny because it's a movie that really changes like at a certain point once you start understanding like satire and stuff.
Yep.
And like when you're a kid, when you watch it, like I was pretty young when I watched it for the first time. Same with like movies like Total Recall or whatever else, and you just see the pure violence, and you think that it's like a serious sci-fi movie about these evil alien bugs or whatever. And then you watch it later, and you're like, the scene at the end where they're like literally all wearing Nazi jackets, and what's his name comes up to the queen bug and sticks its fingers in his nose, and
Neil
it's like,
Patrick Harris.
yeah, Neil Patrick Harris.
It's afraid, and then
It's
they're all
afraid.
cheering.
Like, yeah, it's so funny, but also pretty poignant, I guess.
I'm gonna connect this to Godzilla somehow, and it's gonna work. So
We'll see.
it's interesting because it's one of those cases where like it's when you're older and you don't just read it as like a cool like sci-fi thing. It's very clearly satire. But in all the sequels, every extended piece of work for Starship Troopers, drop
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Immediately drop that.
Yeah.
It's taken it completely seriously. It sort of avoided it missed the real part that made it special, and that's why most of them are only straight to DVD.
Right.
I feel like Godzilla
The original
also kinda went
novel
that
is
way.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because Godzilla, the original one, is horror. It's a meant to symbolize kind of the fear and just the terror of nuclear power, nuclear bombs, and only after decades. In 2016, we get a Godzilla
70
that
years.
actually is very similar to that. It's a spiritual rebirth, Shin Godzilla. That
okay.
That one is a horror. It's focused on the horror of nuclear energy. It's mainly like a big sort of allegory for Fukushima. But in between those two movies, you have a lot of rubber suit action, lots of fighting, which, don't get me wrong, I love it. It's awesome. I grew up with it. It's the coolest shit.
Same.
But very different from what was originally kind of put out there.
I don't know. I don't really know enough about Godzilla, but I like when he roars.
Oh yeah, that's all you
but
need
no,
to know.
it is interesting how like messages get kind of lost like that. But like Starship Troopers, if you ever read the book, it's like the exact opposite of the movie, which I think is kind of why the sequels go astray, because the book is kind of like pro-military. I mean, it's not propaganda, but it's not propaganda either. It's basically like about the worthiness of serving the military and self-sacrifice and stuff. And then the movie kind of obviously goes in a completely different direction. But I'm interested about that Godzilla stuff now, because I've never seen. Who's that? Matthew Broderick, the '99 one or whatever.
Oh, don't watch it. Don't watch that.
I don't watch that one. That's not Godzilla.
It's too late.
No, don't do
It's too late.
Okay.
And I saw the I saw the recent American one. I thought was pretty cool, and the trailer for the new one was really good. I heard the movie's less so, but
I did not like it.
Yeah. You kind of would assume that they would have fixed the issue from the one in 2014, which was like, hey, there's not enough monster fighting. They're like, we've heard your prayers. We've added 4 more monster fighting scenes. We're like, no. We need more. But I think there's still some cool spectacle things that happen in the movie. I like it.
Yeah, it's just not worth sitting through 2.5 hours of.
Not quite. But it's one of those movies where I have to say, I would never watch it on a TV. You kind of have to watch it in a theater.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna end up going on some random day because I work from home. I can go whenever I want. I'll just go by myself someday and
see it on Tuesday, a matinee, pay $5.
Yeah, that's
exactly.
the way to go.
I thought the first trailer for that movie with Claire de Lune or whatever song it was phenomenal. I don't know if you guys remember that one.
Yeah, no, I saw that one. Yeah, I was following it pretty. I grew up with Godzilla too, so.
Okay.
But I'd say the OG, the original one, definitely watch that one, because I think that's definitely one of the strongest.
I like old movies. So, when did the first one come out? Like 70s,
54.
50s,
54.
Yeah.
Wow.
Black and white.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that old.
It is old. It is
still.
Everyone who watched that movie probably remembered the nuclear attacks on Japan. Not
to be offensive, but they're still feeling some of the radiation.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's still fresh.
Feeling the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It was interesting. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I don't remember in the first one if America was involved too much, because they like to get America in some of the movies as kind of like a big oaf who's like, threat, let's nuke it, or whatever.
Yeah.
But
it's somewhat about environmentalism too, isn't it?
yes,
Like just generally.
Mm-hmm. I'd say the
Definitely
older
the-
ones picked it in more.
the older one. What, more environmental, you'd think?
Yeah, like the Mothra stuff. That's all very like we got to protect these animals.
Yeah. There's a lot of
and,
they have like Hedorah. It was just a pile of garbage, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
Godzilla fights pollution. Literally, pollution is punching him in the dick. He's
Very
big,
subtle.
He's scary. Yeah, incredibly subtle. 200
And then
feet tall,
they kind of just were like, fuck it, let's just do aliens. And then for a while it was just like crazy alien shit.
dude, screw it. An alien has invaded. It's taken over. It's replaced the mayor of Tokyo, and now Godzilla has to beat their ass.
Yep.
So a little different from the political message that it was originally intended, but I still like it.
Still fun though.
Absolutely.
But speaking of fun, I saw you somewhat recently went to Star Wars Land. Did it like make your dreams come true?
Yeah, so I was down for EA Play, and it was kind of like they kind of broke our hearts a little bit because, so it was a thing with EA. They took us to Disney because I'm a shill, not really, but I get called one sometimes.
Shill.
But yeah, that's one more. Just add it to the list. But so they messaged us. I don't know if I'm supposed to say this. Whatever. They messaged us beforehand, and we were like, don't tell anyone, but we're gonna try to get you into Galaxy's Edge. So we were like, sweet, because it's hard to get in now. The section of the park is it's not a full park, right? It's just a section of Disney World or Disneyland. I don't know much about Disney, but
Disneyland.
It's a section of the Disneyland, yeah. A section of the park. It's free to get into, but because obviously demand is so high, you need to have reservations now, and they were snapped up in like an instant.
There's like a timing thing too, right? Like you can only be there for X amount of hours,
2 hours.
and then a stormtrooper escorts you out.
Or 4 hours, yeah. 4 hours, I think. It's like in blocks. And the first and the last hour, they overlap. So like I'll have a 4, like say I'm 12 to 4. Your guys' block might start at 3. So from 3 to 4 you share with me. Then 2 to 6 you have at your own. And then from at 7 someone from the next block would get in.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was pretty great. I mean, I've never really, obviously I really like Disney movies and stuff, or as a kid I really liked them. I'm not like one of the huge fanatics or anything, but I thought Disneyland itself was awesome. All the Indiana Jones rides and stuff, and I don't know, all that stuff was cool. And then Star Wars Land, Galaxy's Edge was a whole nother level. So we thought we weren't going to get to go because they messaged us like before we got to LA. They're like, we had tickets. Disney was down, and then they just canceled on us because Disney will just do shit like that. And then we got to Galaxy's Edge, we got to Disney, and my community manager, Jay, he, like, basically pulled us into, like, a back room and just, like, talked to these people wearing badges. And they're like, all right, you can go. And it was pretty awesome.
Damn. Yeah, that's cool. Did you get, like, behind-the-scenes access, too?
Not really. Not to Galaxy's Edge. It wasn't super busy there, so I think it's not representative of what the experience will be like once the scheduling is over. But yeah, it was pretty cool. I regret not building the lightsaber. It's like $200, but I will say that you have to keep your expectations in line, because right now there's only one ride. A lot of it's atmosphere, shops, food, drink, experiences. So you can't go expecting to, like, have a full day of rides there, because it's just one ride right now. It'll be, I think, 2 or 3 later. But yeah, it was really fun.
How was Cantina?
So there's 2 cantinas. There's one that's like a restaurant, and then there's one that's like an actual bar, and we couldn't get into the bar.
Damn.
It was too
Come
busy.
on.
I know, because it looked awesome.
How else are you gonna yell at droids to get out?
Oh, you just stick your head in. You don't need to go in. Just stick your head in and
Any
shout.
droids in here? You don't belong here. We don't serve your kind.
The most impressive thing on that note is actually, like, the animatronics and, like, the obviously the suits and the characters they have walking around is really cool too. But, like, one of the shops is like a giant Ithorian. That's like, I don't know if you guys know that alien, but, like,
Love
the giant.
Love them.
Yeah.
Favorite race in Star Wars.
Yeah,
hands
Jake
down.
knows them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, they've got, in one of the shops, they've got a giant life-size Ithorian kind of, like, behind a desk. He's like, looks like he's, like, doing some accounting or something. And it was incredible. Like, the detail on him was incredible. Like, the fluidity of his movement. It's like, what they're doing is next level. And I think I think the one in Florida is going to be more expansive and is going to have a hotel.
Oh, I didn't know they're
connected to
making
it.
one in Florida.
Yeah, and I haven't seen anyone talking about this, but they're also making one in Toronto. I don't know if it's going to be Galaxy's Edge, but some sort of Star Wars park in Toronto. And yeah, it's just next level.
For me,
I
it
didn't
would
know there
definitely
was
be
a
the
Disney
atmosphere.
World.
It would have to be the atmosphere to be the coolest part of it, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, so, like, I was, like, filming the stormtroopers just for, like, Snapchat or Vanity or something. But they came up, like, one walked up behind me, the other walked up right in front of me, and kind of like it's like pretend bullying, but it's kind of like they, like, come up and they're, like, right in your face and stuff, and so you're like, this is pretty crazy. Like,
Yeah.
obviously they treat kids differently and whatnot, but
Well, that's Disney putting their flair to it. You know, they've always been
Yeah.
fantastic with their performers to really make you feel, I don't know, like they're the characters, that they're really embodying it.
yeah, I know, because like I said, I've never been to Disney. I've been to, like, Orlando, and some of the other parks before, like MGM, and just, like, the detail on, like, the rides and stuff I thought was really next level. So
There is a very small Star Wars spot in Disney World. They have, like, a walker, I think, in AT&T.
yeah, I think so. I may have been on that when I was a kid. I think they've got a version of what's it called again? Star Tours.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that was fun. Because
Yeah.
the last time I went, my marching band, we were able to basically do, like, a marching band procession through all of Magic Kingdom in Disney World, and that was
wow.
really cool because they literally took us behind scenes, and we got to kind of see, like, Goofy with his mask off, smoking a cigarette, you know, like shit like that, and I was like, this is cool. Yeah. And then, like, my one of my art professors, he used to work for Disney back in the day, like during the 70s or 80s, and he was talking about how, like, it used to be the best company to work as an animator, as an artist, but he kind of saw it, like, slowly fall apart into this, like, cold corporate.
Right.
I mean, it was still corporate back then, but there was a sense that they
course.
cared about their artists and all that stuff, and he gets very depressed talking about it. It's kind of sad.
Huh.
Yeah.
Don't tell me anymore. Don't ruin the magic for me.
No, I won't.
I want to be able to see Toy Story 4 with a clear conscience.
Well, other than
I guess
that, there was
yeah.
that scandal with Pixar, but other than that, they're still pretty
I
cool.
don't want to hear about it.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
never mind. Yep, nothing.
Don't ruin the magic, God damn it.
The only thing I guess I'll say with Pixar, I like the story that apparently the whole second one, I think it was the second one, was it would have never happened because apparently just like they lost all of the footage, but
it got like deleted, right?
It got deleted, and one person brought like a copy home beforehand to just show like their family or whatever, and then they come back to work and it's like, it's gone, it's all gone, and they're like, oh wait, I have a copy, and then they were probably hailed as a king, a queen, whatever.
That's crazy. Can you imagine? Nothing like that would ever happen nowadays. At least I hope not.
I think they were still. It was, I mean, again, like a fully animated studio, like computer graphics.
Yeah.
That's pretty. They were pretty at the forefront with that.
It's not like they had film to lose. I guess it must have been like some sort of hard drive corruption or
some probably comically small hard drive compared to today's.
Goddamn, Joe spilled his hot chocolate on one of the hard drive towers, and see a Toy Story 2.
Oh God,
See ya.
Oh, see ya.
This makes me wonder, like, how does someone take a full length or like part of a major motion picture home with them?
I think it probably didn't have like the glamorous sort of like aftertouches. Like it didn't have the multiple layers. It might have been wireframe for all I know.
Yeah,
but probably not the whole thing because again, storage back then wasn't. You couldn't just bring like a 1 terabyte hard drive. That would have been the size of like a cabinet.
Yeah, of course.
Also, I'm not going to let you. No, I'm not going to let you get away with it, James. You said AT&T. For the Walker.
AT&T.
You said AT&T. I just want to bring that up.
Fuck.
I pointed out. I want to shame you.
Yikes.
Shame. Ring the bell.
Sorry,
Give this man a copy of the Star Wars Guide to Technology.
Oh God. I will say I did have I think it was like a year or two ago, where I just like, I think it was because of you, Jake. We were just talking about Star Wars shit, and I just started binging like Star Wars Explained. I feel like I probably just ran into your videos too, because I was just going through like the recommended.
You don't need to lie to me, James. You're not gonna hurt my feelings.
No, they were like, to be honest, all the channels started blur together for me, because I was like, just Star Wars stuff, cool. And then like, I started looking at Warhammer stuff recently, and that shit's trippy.
It's funny because with your channel, it was like Star Wars. I'm like, oh, I love it, awesome. And then Halo, I'm like, oh, better and better. And then like Warhammer is just like falling over in my chair. It's like that. Who was that?
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon. Yeah, just like passing out.
I picture that in my head immediately as you started that.
Oh, I actually didn't know you did Warhammer.
I've done maybe like 6 Warhammer videos, and they've all done phenomenal. But I just don't know very much about the universe.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you because when you're doing all these comparison videos, there has to be a point when you're like, can you like calm down for a second, Warhammer? Because they sort of like just, they're going to sweep everything.
Warhammer's like, and I'm not saying this to be, okay, so, like you guys are Warhammer fans, and I think you probably agree that it's like a wank fantasy in a way. Like, it's like, how badass can we make these guys? That's not necessarily a bad thing, I don't think, but it does make it kind of difficult when I'm like, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, Space Marines can sleep half an hour a day and have 12 hearts and can lift the earth.
They can taste memories. Like,
what the
exactly.
fuck? Fantastic.
Or like I'll be talking about, I'll do some sort of comparison, and someone will come in and they're like, actually, chapter 3 of this novel has a situation where one Space Marine does this, or one Imperial Guardsman does this, and I'm just like, bro, I'm sorry. I'm gonna miss some of it.
Yeah, and with comparisons like Star Wars, isn't there that one book that everyone rolls their eyes with? Because it was like, I think it was one of those, what was it? It was like a graphic book.
It was the Revenge of the Sith Incredible Cross Sections.
And it was like, this laser is like 400 like trillion gigatons for like one shot, and everyone starts like freaking out. They're like, wait a second, what is it? No, what does this mean?
So that was written by a man named Curtis Saxton, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him that wrote it. And he had a site which was basically dedicated to like why Star Wars is better than Star Trek. And I kind of want to talk about this in a second, because this is why I've more or less stopped doing comparisons. But so they basically got this guy who's like really obviously thinks the importance of a universe's power is really high, and is also, so Star Wars has very clear on-screen feats, but there's been so many books and so many guides and whatever over the 40 years plus that there's been some form of an expanded universe that you can find. It's like you can make the data say whatever you want it to say. So in this book, he says that like Star Destroyers have a range in the light minutes. So like basically they can shoot ships from like tens of thousands of kilometers away, and that they've got, you know, crazy high yields and stuff. And then you read something like the X-Wing novels, which are some of my favorite, and it's like, yeah, the ship was shooting at another one from 2 kilometers away. So everyone kind of sees his stuff, and everyone knows that the incredible cross sections is a thing, and kind of just ignores it.
And, you know, I think like each universe, each canon for every different franchise, I think it's fun to compare them, no doubt.
I agree. Yeah.
But there's like, with some of the big ones, you have like a hierarchy, and you're really not going to deviate for the most part.
Right. That's
Like,
100% true.
You're going to have Mass Effect is going to typically be on the bottom.
Yep.
The scope of it, like when you're playing the game, it's obviously fantastical and all this, but
Totally.
when you compare it to some other things and other, it gets swept away. It's like, oh, what, you have mass drivers? That's it?
Right.
Ha ha ha! I'm Halo, and I have a 1 kilometer long ship.
Exactly.
And I think even there's been some figures with like Mac guns that may or may not be accurate. I've looked at it, and they always change.
Yeah.
Someone always has a different figure for how fast this tungsten is going.
Yeah, exactly. And part of the problem too is people get really involved in their universe being the most powerful, when like how powerful the technology in the universe is has literally nothing to do with the quality of the universe itself. So yes, Mass Effect has a lower level of technology when you talk about like the Systems Alliance versus the UNSC. That doesn't mean the faction is any less cool or any less interesting. So the problem is, when I started doing these comparisons, I have people who just get like sometimes people don't like my stuff, and that's 100% cool. But people get so angry if I fuck up like something in their comparison. It just got to the point to me where like people are sending me hate emails, even though like when you watch the videos, they've got mostly positive reception. I'd say they all have quite positive reception. Some of them aren't as good, some of them are pretty good, whatever. But then like people will be sending me forum posts, people are just like ripping on it. And like I'm just like, people are way too involved in this really pointless, like childish shit. And it's like, can't be bothered anymore.
You can only say like it's my opinion so many times, right? And even if you have like it's so hard to kind of, I guess, keep in a positive mindset, because even though you'll have 99% of people praising it, you kind of like scan over that, and then the second you get one like negative thing, it's like fixating on it, like
Totally.
look at this guy.
I mean, another one of the problems too is the universes are contradictory. Like I just mentioned the Star Wars example, but Halo, the Halo Reach, what is it? I did a video on this the other day. The Halo Reach data, I forget what the collectible thing is in Halo Reach, but basically it talks about how it would take the Covenant years to glass a single planet entirely, so instead they just do it in a specific way. So that puts the Covenant energy production relatively low compared to something like Star Wars. But then you go to Star Wars, and like one of the Thrawn books will have them bombarding a planet, and it does this much damage. And then you go to Legacy of the Force, and it's doing this much damage. So not only are the universes completely in a different style, Halo's military sci-fi, Star Wars is essentially fantasy, something like Warhammer's fantasy. Not only are they in a different style, but they contradict themselves, they use technology differently. So when I was still doing them, and I still do them occasionally, what I'll focus on mostly is like design flaws. So like in universe, the Star Destroyer is has design flaws like this. The UNSC whatever has design flaws like this. Because if you're just gonna get in a pissing match, it's just a pissing match, and it's not productive or fun. At least for me. A lot of people really enjoy it, but I'm over it.
I mean, that's why I don't really watch any sort of... Personally, I'm not a fan of the, like, SCP versus SCP. Because then it's just, like, especially with 682, they keep adding files and they keep ramping it up. And for me, I just sort of get, like, disillusioned with the whole thing. And it has no effect on me after a certain point.
I mean, SCP is not even supposed to have an internal lore, so, like...
The official canon is that there is no canon.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's where it gets a little weird.
682, is it the alligator?
Yeah, yes. It's like the undying lizard thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's fun, but people get way too hung up on it, in my opinion. And I was probably like that when I was like a more angsty teenager or whatever, but like I'm 27 and not that I'm super mature, because I mean I talk about essentially a children's fantasy series with space wizards. But you know what I mean.
Do you know any have you ever been to like those Jedi Force churches?
No, we don't have any in Canada, I don't think.
Isn't it like an Australian thing mainly?
I believe so, yeah. And I think it was mostly like a I don't know if it's actual I don't know if they have actual physical locations. I always read it as like a basically an atheist thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of another, Church of the Spaghetti Monster sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or like Iceland and their Norse gods again, like having Norse churches and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I think in order to convert, you have to have done that thing where like it's an automatically opening door and you just wave your hand once.
Oh, really? You just wave your hand.
Yeah, everyone's done it, Door automatically opens and you just...
Yeah, I
Yep.
did that today.
You've done
Not
that?
on purpose,
You're,
but
you're converted. There you go.
yeah, it's perfect.
Oh, that's great.
I don't know. I think the Jedi have some good ideas, but I don't know.
I think this is one of those things. I'll say that they suck. Jedi suck. I'll say
They're
that Sith
supposed to
suck
suck,
also.
too.
They're supposed to. The same way
Yeah.
that the 3 like laws of robotics in Asimov's like writings suck. They're really bad because they're designed to like make conflict. It's a literary device. It's
Right.
supposed to make something interesting. You can use that. They're contradictory for a reason. The Jedi, it's too restrictive, which
Exactly.
allows for interesting characters to kind of like come to terms with that they either fall from grace and then they fall like, oh, we have to passionate. You got to be Sith now. Why
Right.
can't you be in the middle? And I think people, there's great
Yeah.
Jedis and that. But then they also tell you like, in order to be like the strongest with the Force, the light side. Light side is the best way to utilize the Force, no matter what. So it's like, is the entire universe kind of set that way? Maybe.
Well, yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
I was just saying, Revenge of the Sith is kind of one of those movies. Yeah, I'm not one of those people that thinks Revenge of the Sith is the best Star Wars movie, which like a lot of people I think fairly think that, especially as the people who grew up on prequels are getting older and more active and vocal online. It'll probably be the same thing when the sequel, like the people who grew up on the sequels, are online. But Revenge of the Sith is one of those movies that has a lot more nuance when you watch it as an adult. Like when you realize that that Palpatine and Mace Windu both say the same line. He's too dangerous to be kept alive. Kind of representing the fact that like the Jedi have become like, well, I see the whole movie as like the Jedi being too tied down to their doctrine and their dogma. Like, and all Anakin really needs is someone to talk about like the fact that he's scared he's gonna lose someone he loves. And the whole original trilogy with like Luke and Vader is about how, love is redeeming and stuff, and love is like a very natural human emotion. But the prequels are like, hey, you gotta ignore that shit, lock that down.
Yeah, the Jedi are just a bunch of police.
Yeah.
For this corrupt government. I'm a CIS sympathizer. I'm proud of it. I will.
Fair enough.
I will go down with the CIS. They. But yeah, it's restrictive what the Jedi have, and they were corrupt for I don't know thousands of years or something. The numbers in Star Wars are insane. And
Yeah.
I was just curious if he pulled a lot of like the Jedi stuff from like warrior monks in Japan.
He 100% was inspired
yeah.
by certain things like that. I believe samurais were. We know pretty well that that's definitely a big inspiration. Samurai fights and just kind of like honor, everything like that. He pulled from I think some religious stuff too.
Yeah, Star Wars has a lot of religious and political roots. Yeah, it's there everywhere really. I don't know a lot about where he got the idea of a Jedi from, but I know that a lot of people were confused based on after watching the original trilogy and seeing the prequels. I think most people imagine the Jedi as being someone like a more of a wandering monk going and solving disputes and whatever else. Because I mean, when you watch like Luke's ultimate move basically in Return of the Jedi is not fighting. That's like, basically hit the most powerful and most important thing he does when he throws away his lightsaber and doesn't kill his father and doesn't fight the Emperor. That's like his ultimate move. So then I think some people were pretty surprised when Yoda's doing backflips and commanding troops and shit.
Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. That's an interesting.
And then fast
point.
forward, and it's like, I must kill this child. He scares me, says Luke. But,
Yeah, I got no
Yeah.
problem with that, but
okay, yeah. There's a lot to go. Okay, I'll say that like the sequels definitely divisive for a lot of people. I try to look at them from more of just a film perspective, looking at it as the art, all the process that went behind it.
right.
And when I do that, I can say that Last Jedi gets a bit sad. Kind of like, do you watch Game of Thrones at all?
I read the books, and I watched up to the point where the books ended.
Okay.
Spoilers.
Yeah,
That's
well,
been-
I'm not gonna.
I've been on the internet. Don't worry. I've been on the internet.
yeah, I'm not gonna
I know
go-
everything that happens.
I'm not gonna go into the spoilers, but it's similar where like you can think whatever you want of how they ended Game of Thrones, but what I think you can objectively dislike is the actual backroom kind of talks that were going on. Their decisions to intentionally, they did not want to extend the show longer than it could have. It needed
Right.
more time. They didn't feel like
Yeah.
it needed it. They were divas. I mean, you could look at it everywhere. That's what it is. And it shows. I mean, they said they're hiding from the internet. You don't hide from the internet if you really stand up for what you did. No, they knew
Right.
what they were doing. They just wanted it over with. And now you get to deal with them. Yeah, Star Wars. Yeah.
Well, it became
got,
about like just subverting expectations constantly without any rhyme or reason, basically. The
I
last
mean,
season.
that's kind of what happened, I guess, with Game of Thrones in some ways, and you can draw parallels to Last Jedi. But for me, it's more of like, if I just have to look at the facts of it, right? We know that J.J. Abrams, when he made, his movie, how am I forgetting the name? Forgive me. Force Awakens. When he made that, he did not actually have any plan moving forward. Like, that movie was that movie alone. There was, maybe he had some headcanon, but somehow there was no like continuity director, there was no like creative director, there was no one who was actually passing that on to Rian Johnson. So he's kind of in this situation where he's like, wait, I don't have anything to work with. So then he looks at what do you look at? You look at the reviews for the movie, and there's certain complaints that I feel like people had in the first movie, and it feels like he kind of dealt with them in the second one, so to speak. Like, oh, Phasma wasn't interesting enough? Well,
Right.
oh, Snoke, you want to know who he is? And I know there's people who definitely, they say like, oh, this is good, it's refreshing, we're taking it in a different direction. I look at it from just what happened, and maybe there was more that could have been done if there was some general continuity, some actual like
Right.
big cohesive plan. It just feels mismanaged, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, no. Okay, so I'll give a bit of context because I've got, honestly, like, this has been my life for the past year. Like, I've seen every fucking argument, good, bad. Yours is good. I've seen some that are just terrible.
I'm definitely not the like, this movie sucks, bombs shouldn't fall in space. I'm not gonna. The people who say bombs shouldn't fall in space, I immediately know. Okay, you're not really arguing.
Okay, for one, like, if a bomb falls in atmosphere and there's clearly atmosphere inside the ship and there's gravity, if it falls in atmosphere and then it goes into a vacuum, it's going to continue falling. Regardless, though, like when I came out of The Last Jedi, I put out a very, very, very negative review of the movie, incredibly negative. And there was still some positivity at that point. And then I've started to soften on it. There's still parts. What you said about there being a grand cohesive vision, I agree 100%. They should have had JJ do all three. They should have better. And it's kind of funny because the original trilogy was done like the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
Essentially, George put together three, with the help of some very talented people, put together three movies, basically made up the story as he went along. And there's, so much evidence for that. Even if you don't look into the out-of-universe stuff. But, if you read so I'm really into how movies are made, especially how Star Wars movies are made out of universe. And if you read the what's it called? The Art of the Force Awakens, you get a lot of ideas of how George was picturing the sequel trilogy, because he actually did have a working idea of the sequel trilogy. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting the way that they've stuck to a lot of it. And I wouldn't be surprised. So there's this guy on YouTube. His name is Wayward Jedi. He's not on it anymore, but I hated episode 8. And then he did this basically 2-hour-long breakdown of all the themes and stuff that are, and this is almost like an appeal to authority, but he just made me appreciate the movie so much more. And then he basically explained how it was going to end, and then the trailer came out and confirmed all of what he said. But I don't know. I think it's going to be one of those movies that or one of these things in 10 years when someone puts out a tell-all book, we'll either know that it was a complete shit show or that they were working off something a little bit more. Or maybe George Lucas had a bit more involvement than we know. I don't know. I just got to say it's been exhausting having to be a part of the fandom with this issue being so divisive and Twitter and stuff being so the beast it is.
Definitely. It's man, I mean, it's just for certain franchises it is a hard time to be a fan.
Yeah.
For Halo, again, that one, there's some hope with Infinite, some feel. I'm still a little hurt, so I'm not falling into the hype train right away. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with it, but I think there's been one too many blunders for me to immediately be like, I'm throwing my hat in, I support them fully. I'm just going to wait on the product. Mass Effect, Andromeda, unfortunately, meant that new Mass Effects weren't monetarily viable, and that's just how EA works. So I don't think we're going to see Mass Effect continue, unfortunately. People say that it had to fail because of the third one. They say it was too broad, the impact of the ending, to have anything happen afterwards. And to have anything happen before is there's so much lore available that, it may not be particularly interesting. So I think they did the best they could. And, it's sad that fell. Star Wars again.
It's really sad.
I think Star Wars has the best. I guess there's more hope in there because there's some negative, but there's also some positive. Mm-hmm. You have the negatives, which I'll say for some is, again, the sequels. Mm-hmm. I'll say that I can confidently say that the video games are a strong negative. I don't know if you're allowed to talk badly about EA, but
I can say whatever I want.
Oh, perfect. Them holding on to the license, I think, is so detrimental because you look at the years before that they had owned it. You see how many games were coming out, such a huge quantity of games, good or bad. There were still just tons of games.
I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit.
A bit.
Not from the EA thing, but if you look at... Okay, so in the early 2000s, yes, but Lucas Games as a company, and this doesn't excuse anything, Lucas Games hadn't put out... EA, sorry, what did they call themselves again?
It was
LucasArts, sorry. Why did I forget that? They hadn't put out a single-player game since The Force Unleashed 2, and if you look at the years prior to the Disney buyout, there's articles about how LucasArts is basically in the toilet. But, sorry, I shouldn't have corrected you because I knew what you meant, but...
No, it's fair, and I definitely agree. There's, it's weird. I just feel like having it owned by one person is just not good for
100% agree.
Because let everyone take a crack at it. Warhammer... They don't give a crap. They give it to everyone. And there's games that flunk, and then there's games that rock. They work well with it. Halo would never be like that. It's a gaming franchise. That's it.
Yeah.
But for Star Wars, I think it belongs... I mean, in the way that Disney is now letting, different creators of different, backgrounds start making their own, franchises. Look, we're getting a Mandalorian TV show. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We're getting
cool.
tons of interesting content. I like that there's going to be, side stuff, not just these main movies. I like that.
Agree.
The game shouldn't be any different. We shouldn't be restricted to Battlefront and Battlefront 2.
No, I agree 100%. Because unlike movies, where I feel like if you put out 4 movies a year, there's going to be burnout. Or if not burnout, you're not going to be able to appeal to the same amount of... people aren't going to see every single Star Wars movie. At least the general crowd won't be. But with video games, there are so many different niches and so many different avenues you can go. So many different types of games you can make. I don't understand either giving it to one company, even one that is as, EA has many different studios under its yoke, but still, why not have it be merit based or who wouldn't do a Star Wars game if they had the opportunity?
Yeah, and there's so much you can do in it. I mean, here's an easy formula to make any Star Wars fan super hyped. Mm-hmm. Make something from Legends new canon. Confirm it. And then everyone's, screaming and cheering, Revan. Everyone's happy with it. They love it.
I will say, I think So I get to talk to the Battlefront 2 devs a lot, and just like a lot of the people working on Star Wars stuff at EA. And although this doesn't make the situation better per se from like a structural standpoint, they've acknowledged like that they kind of fucked up with like the amount of games. And like I know that the Battlefield, like the guys over at Battlefront, like they felt a lot of pressure when they were making their game. And like you see that in Battlefront 2, like that game probably shouldn't have had a space mode, for example. But because they felt like no other Star Wars games are coming out, and we've got to appease every fan who's not getting anything, we need to have a space mode. We need to have all these different things. And it ultimately takes away from like the time they can spend just making a really, really good, whatever. And yeah, so, but I do think, and this isn't me saying like any trade secrets or anything, I do think that we'll be happier this time next year.
Yeah, I will never bash the people who make these games. Because I think there's so much that comes into it. The same with the films. I think everyone who worked on all the sequels, whatever, everything Star Wars related, everything just in general, these are all great people who are very passionate about their jobs.
Right.
A lot of these decisions, unfortunately, certain big changes, they happen far above from a detached kind of hand-making market choices. And I think EA is well known for this. You see it with a lot of their franchises. It's essentially, here's our successful thing. Hey, look, we can do this and make money. Let's try to do that, but with Mass Effect. Or let's try to do that with Star Wars. So they try to keep a model that is profitable and also retain it. And it's difficult, because you look at both Battlefront games, and I don't think there's a single game out there in Star Wars that has captured, like, the feeling of being in Star Wars as good. I mean, the audio is perfect. The visuals
maybe
are
Knights of the Old
fantastic.
Republic, but yeah.
I
said maybe Knights of the Old Republic, but yeah, I would agree. You feel like you're in the game.
It's just, in terms of, like, the amount of detail, you can tell that they, like, poured everything into it.
Yep. And those guys work really hard, and I will say, Battlefront 2, like, the amount of free updates that have been added to that game, like, if you haven't tried it, like, I've seen a lot of articles, and I know that, like, they're making a push to, like, see it treated as almost like a new game, but, like, the amount of free updates that they have and that they've planned is really unreal. But, like, there's only so much you can do to recover from such a, like, fucked up launch,
Yeah.
I will say, though, so regarding, like, what you talked about, franchises going in poor directions, I'll get over Mass Effect because, for one, Andromeda was in a different galaxy, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll get over, I think Star Wars is fine. I have a lot of issues with the sequel trilogy, too. But I do think Episode 9 will close it out well, and there's still so much of the universe to explore. But for Halo, I don't think I'll ever be interested in another Halo single-player storyline. Like, I'll play the campaigns, but, like, 4 and 5 just messed it up so badly for me, I don't think I'll ever be really...
It's another one of those things where, you have a bigger company that is kind of crunching on the little guy, the developers. With 4, I was somewhat optimistically hopeful with it because I'm like, oh, interesting. They're really doing more book-related stuff because I had read the Forerunner trilogy. And it's really nitty-gritty with this Forerunner stuff.
Yep.
And Halo 4 refers to a bunch of it.
Yep. Too much, maybe.
Too much. I would say too much because it's hard to follow if you haven't read it. And even if you have, it's like, Ancilla. Totally. Oh, yes, Ancilla. Gene Seed. Yeah. Yes, okay. Like, all this stuff. It's trying to remember these terms. The gameplay is where people, I think, complain most about it. Because they're like, this doesn't feel like a Halo game. It feels like Call of Duty. But, I've always been a big story guy with them. I love the multiplayer for 3 and just all Halo 2, 3. These games, amazing multiplayer. But it's always been the story that I don't know. It feels like an epic. It feels like a big drama.
Yeah.
The stakes are real. It's really dark. It's darker than most people kind of give it credit for.
Bungie, I think, did tone incredibly well with Halo. Like, when you step on the Ark in Halo 3, you feel like you're in some ancient, old thing at the edge of the galaxy, like, that you shouldn't be on. Or, like, when you step on the ring for the first time, it feels like you're stepping into an old pulpy science fiction novel. And, like, the Forerunner, like, I remember me and my buddies, like, when we'd have sleepovers back in the day, and, like, we'd stay up late talking about Halo, we talk about like what we thought the Forerunners were like, and obviously you can't have just mystery for so long, but the way they kind of constructed their universe to have the best elements of like military science fiction. I don't know what genre you'd call the Forerunner stuff, but the way they put all of that together, like I still remember reading the terminals in Halo 3, and it was more engaging than like any of the terminals that we got moving forward.
Yeah.
And then to me, like the thing that hurts me most about Halo 4 and 5 is the way they've treated the Forerunners, because they've removed all mystery and they've removed kind of the aesthetic, and
It's out in the open, and it's one of those things where I feel like there's parallels to Star Wars too, where Halo 4, it's treading into new ground. It's got a lot to live up to, and it isn't received super well. So when they look at it, they're trying to figure out how they can kind of like remedy it. I think they should have stuck with like the Forerunner path that they were going. Do more stuff with the Didact and the Forerunners. If you're gonna stick with it, see it to completion.
well, better than what they went with.
Well,
certainly.
yes, definitely do it better, but I want to see them expand the story. It just was, they kind of like wiped it over, and then we're like,
Totally.
we're restarting with Halo 5. And
Yeah, I mean they killed Didac
man.
off screen.
they
right?
kill him in a comic.
In a comic, yeah.
Because he survived, but he died in a comic, so he might as well have just died there.
Yep.
And then, I mean, man, Halo 5, it was... there.
Yeah, it's bad.
Actually, that one breaks my heart the most. That one kills me, because I was following the Hunt the Truth stuff.
Yeah, me too. I was pretty hyped for that.
It was so... because it felt like they were actually taking Halo in an interesting direction. They're now going to be... there's going to be human drama, human conflict. Finally, we get to see that Oni are pieces of shit. That they've been poisoning, like, Sangelios. They're sick. They're like Cerberus, in a way.
Yeah, good analogy.
So you get to have this kind of human drama to it. And then they just... Microsoft, this is what it was. I think it got out somehow, but they were like, we don't think people are going to be too engaged fighting other humans. We need to keep it aliens.
Right.
We need to keep it sci-fi, this is a little too nitty-gritty for us. So they had this interesting path that they were going on, and then it kind of had to be like, okay, let's do more Guardians then, and then let's do Cortana, and that's kind of, man, that's just,
One thing that bothers me too is it felt like there was a lot that was changed just for the sake of changing. Everyone talks about the art style, but like, and it is kind of a meme at this point, but like, the fact that like they just went out of their, like, Halo is partially like so well loved because it does have a very defined style. Master Chief looks how he looks, the grunts look how they look, the elites look how they look, and then Halo 4, like, on top of having a story that's like very, very different from any other Halo game, they also made it so everything, like, they reject the old art style, they reject the style of music, although I can't fully blame them for that. Different composer, there's only so much you can do.
You cannot live up to Marty O'Donnell. You cannot.
You can't.
And then he was done dirty by Destiny too. Bungie, they screwed him.
There's something going on behind the scenes, 100% with
Well, that more
Marty.
thought Destiny too.
Either way.
What, James?
Marty was let go. I don't remember what the reason was. But
That's the thing. Like, Bungie had changed after they left Halo. It's so weird. I find it so contradictory and strange that they were like, we're moving away from Halo because we've always been independent at heart. And then immediately
Activision.
fuses to Activision Blizzard. Like, oh, okay. What was that about? And then you have more of, like, you have people who have remained behind, that are in 343. And then the people who are left, they've been dropping and, like, leaving. And it's changed.
Yeah.
And now they're owned by, like, a Chinese company. And God knows what that means for Bungie. It just means more free Destiny, maybe? Free Destiny, Asian-focused shooters.
Well, the thing about Marty, too, that, like, people don't talk about is he, like, did a lot more than just sound design and music. Like, he had ideas about story. Like, he was with Halo since the very beginning, so he knew the universe as well as anybody else, probably. And if you ever read, like, behind-the-scenes stuff, it talked about Marty's contributions, like, how things should work. So I feel like there's something going on because Marty and Bungie, like, I always figured would be inseparable, but
It's Bungie stopped being Bungie. It changed. And he's moved on to greener pastures. He's working on, I think he has his own studio now. I think it's called Tightwire or something. Kind of a little not a nod at Bungie so much as like a jab.
That's really funny because speaking of tight wires, Ben Burtt, who was the sound designer for the original Star Wars movies, he made like all of the famous sounds of the blaster, the lightsaber, the droids, what have you. And I say it's a funny connection because the sound for a blaster comes from him. Basically, there was like I think it was a wire outside of his house, or somewhere near the studio that he basically made vibrate and made the blaster sound. But he's had nothing to do with the sequel trilogy, and no one knows why, really. And the sequel trilogy's had really good sound design, and then now he's involved with the new Star Wars game. So it's weird how like all of these kind of who we see from the outside as foundational figures to whatever universe kind of are sometimes just dumped away.
I feel like just certain parts of like a craft can be kind of neglected or not seen as like as important as others. Mm-hmm. Like some people neglect writing somehow. They don't see the importance in it. Astonishing. Sound, again, it's super, it sets the tone so much. Everything has to come together to make a nice, clean package. It's
totally.
It's just wild that you'd like drop someone.
I mean, my
100% agree.
TV sound designer professor I had last year had so many stories of him or colleagues working on films or shows having to fight producers to like let them get the funding to do a decent job. And he was saying even with the Star Wars films, they were like not really giving the sound design team the resources and time they really needed. And he was saying he definitely, as a like expert, noticed that it wasn't mixed that well. There were definitely some clear issues that maybe, normal people not realize, but for him it was like, damn, this is like a blockbuster film and they're still kind of dicking over the sound team. Like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, the A New Hope especially is like, it seems like it was assembled by George's wife in George's basement. But yeah.
I think there's a strong claim that people have made that she like saved the movie. That it was saved in the edit. Like you kind of see what he was doing and it was like, some of it just does not hit.
George was surrounded by phenomenal talent, like across his wife Marsha, his, John Williams. Like imagine Star Wars without music. Have you ever watched any of the trailers for Star Wars before the score was finalized? They're pretty friggin' weird.
Oh, I haven't. Yeah. That'd be cool.
No one really did like classical music, I guess, to it. Or it kind of like harkened back to old sci-fi.
Yeah.
Another thing I will say, kind of tying to what you said previously about Halo, how they kind of like abandoned their art style. I think you have another parallel that you can kind of draw between Star Wars in that. So they didn't have like, I'd say, what would you call it? Like a touchstone. There wasn't something that you could like be like, yes, this is Halo, 100%. Of course, there's the Master Chief there and that, but it feels so distinctly different. There's some, it's not a lot of the stuff that you know and love. It's different.
Yeah, I agree.
And Star Wars, one of the things that has bugged me the most, hands down, I think might be the most like annoying thing with the sequels, is I think there is a criminal lack of existing species.
Yeah.
There's so many new species that they've crammed in there. I just want to see like a Nemoidian chilling around. I want to see an Ithorian that doesn't have like a mouth in front of its face, or it felt like they had to make new. Like you just give me some of the old. Let me make it. I want to know that yes, this is 100% Star Wars. Just seeing like these races that I know and love existing in like the Mandalorian like trailers or whatever. That gets me more excited.
Solo had a lot of them.
Yeah, had a bunch. It's exciting.
Yeah, I find that pretty bizarre too, especially where they did the whole Canto Bite thing in episode 8. Like that's like a perfect opportunity to throw like a hut into a casino and throw like, it was basically a menagerie of species, like throw a Twi'lek in there or like
anything, right?
Anything, yeah. Yeah, that is I found that to be pretty off-putting. Well, and I complained about that in my review for the movie.
Moving on, I have a question.
Sure.
How did you go from law school to YouTube?
So I graduated law school in 16, and then I moved to Toronto. Go Raptors! Moved to Toronto in 27, or yeah, the end of, I guess, right after graduating, May 2016. And I had an amazing job there. I was basically working for the government. Probably the best job that I could have had in my field, which was administrative law, which is basically how tribunals and stuff work. But we didn't like Toronto. Well, so I was with my fiance at the time. When we moved there, she was my girlfriend, but we were living there, and we really liked the city, but we always knew we wanted a house, we wanted kids, we wanted all of those things, and we kind of wanted to be close to our family too. I live on the East Coast, so we decided I'd be there for a year, and then when my contract was up, even though they were going to reoffer, we would decline it and move back home. So my fiance is a nurse, and I guess it was February of 2017, so I was like almost done it was December of 2016, halfway done my first year. She's like, I've got to move back to Halifax because there are no nursing jobs here, which is surprising given it's, one of the biggest cities in North America.
Yeah.
There are no really good nursing jobs here, and she got an offer from the local children's hospital, and she's a pediatric nurse, so it was perfect. So it was like January of 2017. She moves back home. I'm in Toronto in my little apartment. I've only been there for a few months. I don't know many people. I've got all this time. So when I came home from work, I would just start making YouTube videos. And eventually it got to the point where it was I was starting to make enough money. I remember the steps. It started off where like, okay, I'm making enough money that I can get lunch a couple extra times a week. Okay, I'm making enough money where like it would be a minimum wage job. And then by July of 2017, I got really lucky. It was only like 5 or 6 months after I started. I was like, okay, I'm making enough money where this can be my job if I wanted to. So I had this excuse because I was quitting my job and moving back home. We had just bought a house in Halifax. I was like, I'm going to try this for a couple of months. Kelsey was down. Let's do it for a couple of months. Let's see how it goes. And thankfully that summer was, a really great summer for me, like view-wise and channel growth-wise. So we just decided I would stick at it for a bit, and I guess here I am, just over, I guess I'm 2 years old on YouTube now.
Damn.
A little over 2 years old.
Well, hopefully we're at 500,000 in 2 years. No, I don't think that's happening.
I would be surprised if you guys weren't.
I don't know. We've been slowing down these past few months, actually.
I think
just need one big hit.
I wish. I mean, we had like a big viral one, which was unexpected. It's like, how many? It's 2.5 million now?
Is that the staircase one?
No, it's
the
painting. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Staircase isn't that big.
That's got like 100K.
I really like I like that one and the coffee machine one a lot.
The infamous coffee machine.
Infamous coffee machine. That was a nightmare shoot. That was a little tricky, that one.
Took 3 months to make.
I believe you guys can do it though. YouTube's a weird thing. Like,
well, I'm hoping Red Reality is the comeback kid. So, which will be out by the time this is out. So we'll see.
Oh,
yeah.
Go watch it.
July 1st,
guys. It's a movie. Feature
basically,
length.
over an hour.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So
see that there's the opportunity for that to do really well on YouTube. And I did say all you need is one big video, and no, one big video will not get you to 500K subs, but for me, like, success on YouTube is like once you get a couple evergreen videos and once you get a couple like views coming in steady. I remember I hit 100,000 subs in December, and then like January I hit 200,000. Just like you have really crazy growth spurts on YouTube. Whenever the topic that you're doing is hot, or you get it's honestly like you get 2 big videos like in a row, and then like everything you put out after that for a couple months will be gold. Like I remember December of a couple of years ago when my channel was doing really well. It's like every single video I could have like taken a video of myself like shitting in a bucket and it probably would have had 100,000 views, because like when the YouTube algorithm likes you, like it's crazy what it will do for your channel.
The specs on my shit detected the next plot line in Star Wars Episode 8. Just shit like that,
Yeah, exactly.
God.
Stuff like that. But yeah, it takes a break. YouTube, like, anyone who tells you YouTube isn't a lot of work is lying, but there's also always an element of luck to it.
Yeah.
But you guys are on the right path because you're doing something that there's an interest in and that's not really being done otherwise, which is key. But the big moment for me in channel growth was when I could afford to go full time, because then you get to basically up the quality and quantity of your work. Like, it's hard when you're starting out and you're, like when I started my YouTube channel, I was competing against Star Wars Explained and all these channels who were doing it full time.
Yeah.
I didn't even have a proper microphone.
Damn. I mean, for us, we also have the element of like live action is expensive.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, that's really tough too.
I mean, for us, we're trying to just do it more so as this is a thing that can fund all of our creative endeavors, and then we'll make money doing film, videography, and whatever. So.
Well, you never know. Like, I always figured my channel would just be something I would do until I moved back home. Like, something I would do while I had no friends in Toronto.
Yeah. I will say, I went to Toronto last summer, and I was extremely disappointed.
In Toronto, you said?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was there last summer for like a couple weeks.
Where did you stay?
My friend, she lives in like the same neighborhood that like Usher lives in, wherever that is. I'm not sure if you know where that is.
Usher has a house in Toronto?
Yeah, he does. It's not in the city. It's like right next to. It's like in the outer skirts of. It's near. Supposedly there's like an Asian area that's like north of Toronto. Is it north?
Huh.
Or it's like very close. I'm not sure if it counts if it's in Toronto or it's like on the border of Toronto.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I lived in Toronto, I lived like right, I guess it's not, you would call it downtown, but it's like, Toronto's a very integrated city. Like, there's commercial and resident, like, some people just don't like it. I mean, I think it's a phenomenal city to live in, but, if you had a bad experience, you had a bad experience,
Well,
I think it was just the matter of you didn't really do much there. There wasn't.
Well, I had a day where I was just like, because I mainly went there just to see my friends because they're like Discord buddies I met over a year ago. She actually, her actual apartment that she normally stays at actually is where TIFF is, where they hold the film festival, that whole section. But anyway,
King Street, I think. Yeah.
I think the big issue is I grew up visiting and experiencing New York City. So I'm like, I'm going to go into like, I know it's not as big as New York City, but I was like, I'm going to the New York City of like Canada. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of really cool stuff there. And then I kind of spent the day and I'm like, there's not a lot to do. And it was a lot sketchier than like New York City, which was like,
really? Oh, I found the exact opposite.
Yeah. I went to some areas that were like, this is pretty, I don't know. I feel like I'm in some pretty sketch areas.
So, like, your problem was probably that you weren't, like, in the core or, like, in the actual city. Like, Toronto is, like, Toronto's a much larger... Well, Toronto's a very large city and area. Like, it goes on forever. Like, you can drive for hours. It's like L.A. I don't know if you've ever been to L.A. before.
Well, I haven't been, but
like, okay, so if you go to L.A. and you stay in Hollywood, for example, it's very different than if you go to L.A. and stay in some, wherever. Because, like, it's still the same city, but there's so much sprawl. You can be in this one place where there's not much going on. And it's not really representing what it's like to live in the city itself. And I'd say it's the same with Toronto. Like, I lived on King Street, which is one of the major...
Yeah, I've been to King Street,
yeah.
That was nice.
Yeah, it's... I mean, I loved it there. I miss it, like, so much. But I found Toronto to be a very, very not sketchy city. I don't know statistically if it's safer than New York, but I mean, I think
statistically it's less safe, actually.
Yeah. I would believe that. But I don't know. To me, yeah. I mean, I never had any problems, but I was only there for like just over a year, so.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like also visiting and living are very different experiences. Yeah. So. I know.
I'm going in 2 weeks, I think, and I'm super excited because it'll be the first time, besides for stopping at the airport since I left. So.
That's cool. Halifax, that's on the East Coast, right?
Yep.
I went when I was a kid. I went to like St. John's Island, Nova Scotia, like all that stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Halifax. Like, it's a great mix of. So, like, I live in what you'd call I live in the suburbs, but Halifax is small enough. I think it's like 500,000 people that I can drive downtown and traffic's not too bad. But it's still got like, it's like large enough that it's got everything you'd want, The only thing we don't have is Uber. That's because we've got like a taxi cartel, basically. But yeah, it's like small enough that like the one thing about Toronto, and I'm sure New York, I visited New York a bunch of times, but I've never lived there. But like Toronto, if you want to go to the beach, you can drive 2 hours and the beach will still be 100% packed. And it's just miserable. But like Halifax is small enough. Like took my son to the zoo the other day, and it was like, I didn't get stomped over or like lost in a crowd or anything. But it's also large enough that like we've got everything you'd want, I guess.
Yeah.
That being said, it's very different than living in like, a metropolis.
Well, I will say I live in Long Island, so it's like right next to the city. And the nice thing about Long Island, I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. Like the people here can be a bit No offense to people. Yeah, I don't hate all Long Islanders. Just,
Shout out to Long Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, fuck everyone from Long Island.
But like the cool thing is like if you drive like 30 minutes north or like 40 minutes east, completely different world. If it's like
totally,
it's so many different like environments in this little island, and I always like thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Hempstead is very different from Oyster Bay. These are
literally Garden City.
Areas.
Literally the town next to each other are completely different areas.
Garden City, you're keeping your head down. You get to your place where you got to go, and that's it. Oyster Bay, you go there for a nice evening with a nice day actually with your family. Go walking on the strip, enjoying some nice food. The
Teddy
water.
Roosevelt's house.
Theodore Roosevelt's house, the legend, the most American man to ever live. Yeah, he's out there.
From what I've heard, yeah.
This is turning into like a travel podcast now.
Yeah, this is a travel podcast, guys.
Lots of places to visit. That is great though when you can drive somewhere and like it's like I visited LA this summer and I went last summer too. I don't think I could ever live there because like so I stayed in Hollywood for EA Play, and like to drive to the airport, which is probably 30 kilometers away or 20 miles I think was how far it is. It took me an hour and a half.
Damn.
And like it's like unbearable. Like here, if I drive an hour and a half, like I'm gonna fucking farm somewhere, or like, yeah, it's the same thing as what seems Long Island is like. You can, 15 minutes I can basically be out of the city, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and then literally we're like 20 minutes away from Queens, so it's like either way. But I hate. What's like weird? Like I could literally be in Brooklyn in 30 minutes at a non-peak hour, so like late at night or on off hours. But then normally it takes like an hour and a half.
That sounds nice.
So
definitely don't have that here. There's no Brooklyn or Manhattan in Nova Scotia. Other than Brooklyn and Manhattan. It's not that far away. It's an hour flight, I guess.
I remember there being like a warmth though when I went to Nova Scotia, which New York doesn't really have, in my opinion.
A what?
Like a warmth. Like there's like an old town kind of feel to it.
Yeah, it's kind of and I don't want to play on the stereotype of Americans being friendly, because if you go to Toronto, it's very similar to New York, and there is some difference. Like when I go to Toronto, people are very, like my Uber driver will talk to me, and if I'm sitting next to someone in like a train or whatever, they'll talk to me. But it's I don't think it's a Nova Scotia thing. It's just like big metropolis or big area, or even this surrounding area versus, just a less urban. It's just like not quality of life, but tempo of life is different, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, the stereotype, I guess. Americans are nice. It like applies to almost every state except for New York. But
yeah, I've never heard about New York.
I will say that like it's easy to say everyone in New York is a dick. I think it's more of you have to look at it. It is a really packed city, and for the most part, most people that you see walking around have somewhere to get to. If they could take a car, they would have. If they could have taken a bus or anything else, they would have. They're commuting. So if you're in their way, you're traffic. If you're interrupting them, it's got to be for a good reason. But like otherwise, I mean, they're friendly. Everyone's friendly. I think New York is a fantastic place. Great people.
Oh yeah. Well, the people aren't any different. That's like the main thing is like if you sit and have a conversation with a Canadian, if you sit and have a conversation with an American from any province or state, it's not like they're different. It's just like when you see them on the street, there's just different levels of tolerance for like, not necessarily bullshit, but like there's just different expectations for how people interact in busy public spaces, you know?
I mean, if you
Like if I'm sitting with if I'm at a table next to someone in Dartmouth where I live, they'll probably talk to me like in New York. It's the same in LA too. I noticed people are really talkative, but I found New York people were really helpful though.
yeah, that is actually a true stereotype. I found that to be true.
Yeah, if
as
you
well.
can get us to stop moving for a second, we're immediately you've earned our loyalty.
I mean,
But at the same time, you can like drop dead in a subway, or you can. I mean, and you'll be ignored. I mean, have you seen any of like Eric Andre stuff?
No, yeah, actually something similar to that happened to me in Toronto. I was at a McDonald's on like because there's a lot of homeless people in Toronto. Not as much as like LA, probably not as much as New York. I don't really remember, but there was a guy at a table and he didn't move for like the entire time we were there, like not even a little bit. Like no one did anything. So I like went up to him and he like didn't have a pulse.
oh my god.
He didn't end up dying, but it was so weird. He was definitely like suffering from like mental health issues, and like he was really, really high on some drug that made his pulse very weak. Because like, and like, I'm not trying to be like derogative, but like he was like a dirty guy. Like he was like wearing old clothes and he was sitting in a McDonald's and not buying anything, you know, like asleep on a table. Like no one would do anything for this guy, you know? So like Kelsey's a nurse, but she was scared because, you know, he's a grown ass man and she's like a small woman. So I checked his pulse and I couldn't feel any. And I was like, how long has this guy been here? And he'd been there for forever. And they called the ambulance, but before they got there, the guy just got up and walked away.
Damn. It reminds me of this video I saw today about this guy. He like lit his hair on fire and was like dancing around, and everyone was just like, nope. And they were just walking by as this guy's face is literally melting off, and he can't even realize it.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
PCP or something? Like,
I don't know, man. I don't think even PCP will like get you like to that state.
I don't know much about drugs, to be honest.
No, he just watched a Doom Eternal trailer. He's getting into character.
Yeah. Sounds about right. I mean, I went to Shanghai a couple years ago, and that was like, whoa. Like,
yeah,
no personal space, which was kind of fun, but also like, I could not do this day to day. Like,
yeah, there's definitely very like, I'm sure like comparatively to like Toronto versus, you know, LA or LA versus New York, like I'm sure the difference in society seems relatively minor compared to like totally distinct culture.
yeah, like, you know, like I'm walking down the street, people will just like not push, but like move you to the side. There's no sense of like, I shouldn't touch this person because I don't know them kind of deal. Because sometimes you think, oh, I'm a foreigner, you know, they might be a little more. Nope.
Yeah.
You're in the crowd. You're a part of it.
One interesting difference in, I guess, how people act in public in LA versus New York is cars. In New York, like, cars are very aggressive. Like, you know, in Halifax, for example, if there's a person in the intersection, even if they're on the other side of the street, the car will not go through. But in New York, it's like, at least in my experience, on Manhattan or in Brooklyn a little bit, if as long as you're like, they're not going to hit you, they'll go.
Pretty much.
But then in LA, it's like so consumer, or sorry, not consumer. What's the word I'm looking for? Not commuter, just walker friendly. That like it, like if you're in LA and you're in a crosswalk, the cars won't go. And I noticed too, like, because like I'm when I'm in a big city like Toronto or New York, I'm used to just like walking across the street, even if it's not like a crosswalk. You just walk across the street if it's safe. But if you try to do that in LA, cars will stop for you, even like illegally.
Interesting.
It's just like I wonder what ends up leading to that difference. Probably that people are really litigious in LA and they'll sue you if you hit them.
I think it's also because in New York you see people walking around constantly, and I feel like LA it's not as often. So it's like you have to start running over
LA
people.
They're broke, you know. If they hit someone, they're dead. They're all the money's gone. You can't afford. New York it's Frogger. Yeah, people are both the people are insane and the people driving. Like, it's you have people who are gonna walk like and they're barely touching like the taxi that just like blasted
Yeah.
by them. It's a jungle. It's a jungle sometimes.
Does New York have the new like I don't know if they're new. We don't have them here, but the new Uber scooters? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
What scooter?
Everywhere you go in LA, there are these electric scooters. Literally every block will have like 10 of them. And you get on them, they're so good. You can travel across the city on these scooters, and it's basically just like it sounds like. It's like a scooter with a motor in it. You can hit like 20 miles an hour.
I think I've heard about them.
We have city bikes.
They're so good.
We have bikes.
yeah.
But if you get on a bike in the city, you're asking for death.
That's funny because in Toronto I commuted everywhere by bike, even in winter. But I wouldn't do it in New York.
I will say Toronto had much, at least in the downtown area, much wider streets than New York does. Because New York, only their avenues are wide.
definitely.
Their streets are narrow as fuck.
Yeah, they're both kind of slave to the grid format, but but yeah. So basically, like if I were to walk out my hotel room, there's just like. Because the good thing is you get on these scooters, and then when you're done, you just leave them. So like every block just has like tons of these scooters on it. You get on them, you pay like 10 cents a minute, and you can basically go like across the entire city
Oh, you know,
for like a few
Fuck,
bucks. It's amazing.
there is a city in China. I'll post the pic for the viewers, but they had a same thing where it's like everyone could just rent a bike and then you just ditch it and the company will pack it up. Well, this entire apartment building, everyone turns out was using those bikes and just tossed it right next to the entrance to the apartment building. There's literally like a 10-foot mound of these bikes after some point. It was insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah.
So literally just, and then they saw people walking out, just fishing a bike out of this mass and then just like going to work. And I was like, what?
Yeah. With the scooters, they make you take a picture of it on the app.
Oh, okay.
And, but the good thing is, like, no one has to come collect them because someone will just take it and go. Yeah. Like, they don't need to be recharged very often, it seems like, and they just kind of, yeah. They're super fun, too. Like, I, like, looked forward to commuting. I was like, sweet, I gotta go across town. Let me hop on my scooter.
That's pretty cool. No, like the ones here, they have like GPS built in. So then like wherever it is, they'll have literally a truck go around picking them up and putting them back into like their stations. Yeah.
That's better than, because like in Toronto, you have to dock them, which is not the most convenient.
Yeah, no. I think
Like-
it used to be like that, but
Yeah. Maybe it's not anymore there either, but I loved it. Because I would bike to work every single day, and it was awesome.
I will say Toronto subways, very nice, very clean.
Not nearly as effective as like New York though. Like I was downtown and there weren't any subway stops near me.
Well, yeah, there's definitely a lot less lines in general, though. Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah, it's good north to south, and it sounds like you were probably north, but east to west, it's kind of shit.
Well,
At least
actually,
where
I
was.
think it was a little. I had to take a bus to get to a subway station, like a 30-minute
That
bus
just
ride.
sucks.
Yeah, fuck the bus.
Oh yeah, you must have been pretty far out.
Yeah, it was a decent car ride in. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna throw a curveball.
What's up?
Okay.
The metro in Prague was terrifying.
yeah,
It is an old Soviet, made by the Soviets.
Nuclear powered.
Oh boy. I mean, I will tell you, holy moly, I have never been more frightful. And I wasn't even on the train yet. I was the escalator. The escalators are normally, nice and it's like a nice gradient. You step on, you move up, nice and fine. Normally, it's slow enough that you can see the step and then just wait, step on it, and then you're on. Fine. Not this one. In this one, not only is it not a gradient, it is the steepest escalator I've ever seen in my life. It's practically you're staying on your like tippy toes. It is like going straight up. It's more of a ladder than an escalator. And on top of that, the steps are moving like 3 times as fast. So you don't wait for the step. You just
oops,
Oh, he's back.
you just
Sorry.
step on there
my
and
bad.
assume that it's going to catch you.
It's got no time for your bullshit.
It's got no time.
safety.
No
That's
one.
not
I
very
mean,
efficient.
no one else there like seemed to notice. They didn't care. They were getting on and off. They're used to it. But for me, I'm like holding on to it for like dear life. I'm leaning all the way forward because it feels like I'm gonna fall. If I fall backwards, I'm falling like 200 feet down. Like it just felt terrifying. And then of course the trains are like super fast
Yeah.
and loud. Very fun.
Never heard that about a subway or a metro before. Fun.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I'm not doing that ever again. I'm not going that particular. I'll walk. I don't care. Prague is a beautiful city.
Yeah, might as well.
One day, there's like an insanely good film school there that like they handpick students.
Do they need any SCP creators? There you go.
That's just
I
what
just
they were
finished
missing.
film school. I'm done with that shit. Like my friend's probably gonna do like grad school for film was weird. Like you're only going there if you're gonna get like crazy connects, basically.
So is it? Do people mostly pay for it, or
Yeah,
do
no,
you get
it's
like,
paid.
work?
Definitely, you have to pay for it. Yeah.
That sucks.
And like what sucks with my school, I won't mention the name, but like once you graduate, they're kind of like, fuck off, just give me money. That's it. And it's like, then you get and hear about other film schools where it's like they actively are trying to get them hooked up in the industry. And for me, it's like I had a very loose family contact that me and Jake interned for a production company, and like that got me some really horrible, shitty PA work. But other than that, it's been like I'm just kind of people I met at Hofstra scrambling to get work every now and then. It's like,
So you just said the name of the college anyway.
oh, I did. I'll bleep
Yeah.
it out. It's okay.
We'll bleep it out.
But I know.
Oh, you know, yeah.
If you become a patron to the Eckhart's Letter Patreon and pledge more than $10 or more, I'll leak their film school to you guys.
Oh no.
Oh no.
Wow. Well, you can technically if you look hard enough. A fan was like, "Whoa, you filmed at my university." I'm like, "Cool. I went to school there."
Cool. You live too close to us.
Yeah.
Stand down.
Step away slowly.
That's not good.
You know, I
You're
just
gonna get murdered.
realized we're almost at 2-hour mark.
Almost at 2 hours. Fantastic. And I'm so glad we've had this wonderful SCP conversation.
We got it.
I like the one with the spooky object.
Oh, the spooky object, man. That was terrifying.
Mhm.
That was really
I like
good.
the one that's spooky, that when you put stuff into it, it comes out spookier.
Yeah. I like the one that seems spooky but actually isn't as spooky. It's kind of pleasant.
That one was very cute.
Mhm.
Yes. Speaking of SCP, time for the SCP book club that we forgot to do last week, so we'll just give you guys a new one, right?
Yeah, let's you know what?
So basically what we're thinking is SCP-2761 Bananazilla. A little synopsis. Basically these people trying to make some cool, nifty, genetically modified glowing pet fish,
As you do.
and they're like, wait, what if we make them smell like fruit? And things go awry. So
Things get wacky.
yeah, it's a fun one.
Sounds wacky.
Check it out.
So you guys gonna have a full discussion of that next episode?
Yeah.
Yeah. But because it's kind of weird, it's probably not going to be us having the discussion about it.
Right.
So-
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah, we'll maybe think out this segment a little better at some point. But for now, this works.
Hooray.
Since we're wrapping it up, do you have anything you want to shout out, promote?
Let's see. So I got a new line of skincare. It's no, I'm just joking.
Wonderful.
Skincare products, not just skincare. I'm just joking. I've got my own podcast that you guys can check out. It's called Tapcaf Transmissions. Basically, what we're doing is we're doing a book club style reading of every Star Wars Legends book.
Holy moly.
We basically started with the True Sepulchra, which is right after episode 6. We just did episode 2 on the first book in the X-Wing series. And then next, when's this going to come out?
Oh, we don't know yet.
Who knows?
I want to say July-ish.
Okay. So I don't know what the next book will be by the time this comes out, but if you're interested, we split it on my channel and the channel of the other creator, but you can also find it on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean. Search Tapcaf Transmissions. Other than that, you can follow my YouTube channel. It'll be nothing like this conversation.
Links in the description.
As always.
Sweet.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on. It was a blast.
Thanks. Anytime. It was really fun.
Yeah. Sweet. All right. That's a wrap. Thank
That's
you
a wrap,
guys.
folks.
See you next time.
I hate SCP.